100 years of autocephaly, 1,000 years of history. Apostles of the Slavs. The origins of Christianity in Poland go back to the evangelizing mission of the Holy Brothers Cyril and Methodius. They came to Moravia from Byzantium in the 9th century. Their disciples Christianized the inhabitants of Malopolska, Silesia, and the Przemyśl land. Their activity is evidenced by literary relics and archaeological excavations. They created a new alphabet and translated church services into a language understandable to the local population, thus laying the foundation for the Christianization of all Slavs. As late as the 11th century, there was a Methodian hierarchy in Krakow, and the liturgy was still celebrated in the Slavic language. Kyiv Metropolis. The history of Orthodoxy in the Polish state is also connected with its expansion to the east. From the very beginning, the Piasts competed with the Rurik dynasty for the Cherven cities, which were under the influence of the Orthodox metropolis of Kyiv. During the feudal fragmentation of Poland, the territory of this borderland was occupied by the Principality of Halych-Volhynia, which gained a dominant position in also divided Kievan Rus. The 13th century was a period of development and foundation of Orthodox bishoprics and monasteries in the eastern Poland. Prince Daniel of Halych founded the city of Helm, where he transferred the capital of his state, and in Drohichin he was crowned the King of Ruthenia as the only ruler in history. When the Kyiv Metropolitan moved his seat to distant Vladimir and Klazma, the rulers of Halych-Ruthenia began to strive in Constantinople for the creation of a separate metropolis in Halych. As many as 3 centers sought to establish themselves as the successors of the Kyiv Metropolis. The first, based in Vladimir and later in Moscow, the second in Halych, and the third, initially in Novogrudek and later in Vilnius. The idea of a separate metropolis returned after the unification of the Polish lands and the conquest of the Halych-Ruthenia by Casimir the Great. The king sent ambassadors to the Patriarch of Constantinople and received his approval. In a tolerant religious policy, King Casimir the Great saw the way to the stability of his kingdom, but even greater changes were looming on the horizon. In the 14th century, the Lithuanians subjugated most of the Ruthenian lands, and after the Union of Krevo in 1385, large areas where the Orthodox population predominated ended up in the Polish sphere of influence. The rulers wanted the church structure in their state to be independent of Moscow. But the position of the Patriarchs of Constantinople on this matter was variable. Sometimes they agreed to a separate metropolis, sometimes they refused, as in the case of Metropolitan Gregory Sambuak, who was not recognized by Constantinople, although he was elected by the Synod of Local Bishops in Novogrudek. The division was not consolidated until the middle of the 15th century, when Moscow unilaterally broke with Constantinople, which at that time was involved in a unionist project with Rome. Bishoprics in the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland remained under the jurisdiction of Constantinople. East and West. Under the rule of the Jagiellons, the intermingling of Eastern and Western cultures flourished. Orthodox Ruthenian Byzantine art filled the interiors of Gothic Roman churches, as evidenced by the polychromes preserved in Lublin, Sandomierz, Wislica, and Krakow. From Byzantium, miraculous icons came, and their cult developed like in no other country dominated by the Latin Rite. Queen Helena, the Orthodox wife of King Alexander Jagiellon, is connected with icons of the Blessed Virgin Mary from Bielsk-Podlaski, Bransk, Hodyshev, and Vilnius. Dozens of large Orthodox sanctuaries of the Theotokos were built, and in the wake of the wandering of icons to the west, Catholic sanctuaries were built as well. The most famous, the Czestochowa icon of the Mother of God, came to Jasna Gora from Halych-Ruthenia even earlier, during the reign of King Louis I of Hungary. In addition to the royal family, the great patrons of Orthodoxy were also powerful magnate families. At the turn of the 15th and 16th centuries, the Chodkiewicz family founded the Suprasho monastery, which received the prestigious status of a lavra. Its main church of the Annunciation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, recently reconstructed, was a pearl of synthesis of Ruthenian Byzantine architecture with Gothic, and the frescoes decorating its interior indicated direct links with Serbian culture. Outstanding monuments of literature came to Suprașov and were created there. Dozens of monasteries and scriptoria operated throughout Polish-Lithuanian Ruthenia. And in the 15th century, the first Cyrillic printing press in the world was established in the capital city of Krakow. It published liturgical books for the needs of Orthodox Polish citizens. The culmination of this period was the establishment of the legal equality of the Orthodox nobility with the Catholics. After the death of King Sigismund Augustus, in order to ensure the continuation of these freedoms, the Act of Warsaw Confederation was signed in 1573, guaranteeing equality and peace between Catholics, Protestants, and Orthodox. However, this did not stop the process that led to the formulation of the Church Union in Brest in 1596. The project of uniting the churches by subordinating the Orthodox bishops to the Pope turned out to be a false hope and led to prolonged persecution and internal conflicts. Although the Uniates managed to seize most of the church's property, they were not entirely successful because of the resistance of the faithful. Many centers, especially of monastic life, became bastions of orthodoxy. In the territory of modern Poland, such a place was the monastery of St. Onufry in Niepłeczna, which never accepted the Union. It exercised its spiritual authority over both the Orthodox and the Uniates, exposing the Union as a political project of hierarchs and rulers, alien to the masses of believers who adhered to their traditions. During this period, the role of defenders of Orthodoxy was also played by church brotherhoods, charitable and educational organizations. '17th century. In 1620, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, Theophanes III, consecrated the new Metropolitan of Kyiv and bishops for the remaining vacant cathedrals, but the Orthodox Church managed to regulate its legal status only during the reign of King Vladislav IV. At that time, Peter Mohyla became the Metropolitan of Kyiv. He proposed a number of reforms and founded the Mohyla Academy in Kyiv, a European-level university that educated future staff for the Church in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, enabling it to oppose Uniate tendencies. From the Union of Lublin, the southern part of the Ruthenian lands was directly in the Kingdom of Poland. In the 17th century, it was affected by a series of rebellions and uprisings of the Cossacks, whose motive was also the defense of religious rights. The idea of healing the situation was to conclude the Treaty of Hadziach in 1658 and to create the Republic of Three Nations, with a separate Grand Duchy of Ruthenia, on the territory of which the Orthodox Church was to receive certain privileges. However, this political project collapsed in the following year, and left-bank Ukraine, along with Kiev, came under the rule of Tsardom of Russia. The state of affairs was formalized with the signing of the Perpetual Peace Treaty in 1686, which ended the Polish-Russian War. In the same year, with the consent of the Polish king and the Patriarch of Constantinople, the metropolis of Kiev, along with all its subordinate territories in Lithuania and Poland, was subordinated to the Moscow Patriarchate, which allowed Russia to interfere in the internal affairs of Polish Orthodoxy. This resulted in increased promotion of Unia and anti-Orthodox legislation in the First Polish Republic. Hope for rebirth and a drastic reality. At the time of the Great Sejm, there was an attempt to create an independent church structure. The Pinsk Congregation of 1791 proposed the creation of an autocephalous church and selected Sawa Palmovsky as its future first hierarch, who would reside in the monastery in Bielsk-Podlaski. In the face of the subsequent partition of Poland, the plans collapsed, although the Orthodox tried to defend them by supplying the ranks of the Kosciuszko uprising. In the area of the Prussian partition, the Orthodox practically did not appear, and under the Austrian partition, the Uniates were promoted. During the Russian partition, on the one hand, Orthodox bishoprics were re-established, churches were built, monasteries were founded, and the return of the Uniates to the faith of their fathers was encouraged. On the other hand, the organizational and cultural uniqueness of the Orthodox Church in the territory of the former Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was eliminated, and its traditions and rituals were adapted to Russian models. The oldest monasteries in Drohichin, Bielsk, and Zabudov, which had survived the years of suppression by the Catholic kings, were closed during the reign of the Orthodox Tsars. The road to autocephaly. For the Orthodox population of the Polish lands, World War I is a time of bezjenstwo, flight to the east from the approaching German front. Orthodox clergy who went deep into Russia took with them the most valuable church treasures. 3 million believers left the Polish lands. Many died on the way, many more in the revolutionary turmoil of Bolshevik Russia. Only a few managed to return to the reborn Poland. The territory of the eastern voivodeships of the Second Polish Republic was still inhabited mainly by the Orthodox population. From the very beginning, state authorities wanted the Orthodox Church to become independent. To this end, Metropolitan George Jaroszewski began efforts to obtain autocephaly from the Moscow Patriarchate. However, when Moscow Patriarch Tikhon Belevin was arrested in 1922 and the non-canonical Living Church took over the leadership of the Russian Orthodox Church, the matter was referred to Constantinople. After the tragic death of Metropolitan George, the pursuit of autocephaly was continued by his successor, Metropolitan Dionysius Volodinsky. Finally, on November 13, 1924, the Thomas of Autocephaly of the Church in Poland was signed by the Patriarch of Constantinople, Gregory VII. The formal proclamation of autocephaly took place on September 17, 1925, in the Cathedral of St. Mary Magdalene in Warsaw, and was met with acceptance by the other local Orthodox churches. In parallel with the efforts to achieve jurisdictional independence, work was done to regulate the legal situation of the Orthodox Church in Poland. After receiving autocephaly, Metropolitan Dionysius hoped to introduce a better solution than the existing temporary regulations, which made the Orthodox Church dependent on the state. However, even the status of owned properties was not regulated almost until the outbreak of the Second World War. Because of this legal situation, the Orthodox Church was severely restricted by the authorities, who often did not agree to the opening of parishes and allowed the Roman Catholic Church to take over church buildings. The culmination of the Polonization campaign occurred in 1937 to 1938, when 127 Orthodox sacred buildings were demolished in the Helm and Podlasia regions. Despite all the difficulties, the Orthodox Church in Poland carried out ambitious charitable, pastoral, educational, and publishing activities. The study of Orthodox theology, established at the University of Warsaw, attracted a prestigious group of foreign lecturers and became one of the most important Orthodox scientific centers in the world in the interwar period. The Ravages of War. At the outbreak of World War II, a significant number of soldiers in the armed forces of the Republic of Poland were Orthodox. They showed great patriotism in the September campaign, on the barricades of the insurgents, and on all the fronts of the Second World War. Many of them lie in the forests of Katyn and Kozielsk, like the chief chaplain of the Polish army, Father Simon Fedoronko. Others can be found in the cemeteries of Bologna, Tobruk, and Monte Cassino. Along with the Second Polish Corps, the war trail was also traversed by Field Bishop Sawa Sowietow, the organizer of the Orthodox Pastoral Ministry of the Polish Army in the West. Under the German occupation, Metropolitan Dionysius was at first removed from the leadership of the church, and after his return to his function, his position was severely restricted by national groups. The war consumed many of the most prominent Orthodox leaders of the Second Polish Republic, and left the Orthodox Church in Poland literally decimated. Changes in borders, but also the resettlement of the non-Polish population from the eastern voivodeships to the Belarusian and Ukrainian People's Republics, which began in 1944, resulted in a tenfold decrease in the number of Orthodox in Poland. The number of clergy and parishes also decreased proportionately. Further changes in the geographical picture of the Orthodox Church in Poland occurred when the Orthodox who were forcibly resettled as part of the post-war Operation Wisła began to establish parishes in the west and north of the country in the so-called regained lands. The new reality. Metropolitan Dionysius did not enjoy the favor of the communist authorities, and the continued existence of the Polish Autocephalous Orthodox Church was questioned. Finally, the state authorities decided to dismiss the Metropolitan and establish the Provisional Governing Council of the Orthodox Church. The council directed church activities, including the successful effort to obtain Moscow's consent to the autocephalous independence of Polish Orthodoxy in 1948. In 1951, born in Międzyrzec Podlaski, Metropolitan Makary Oksiejuk became the new head of the Polish Autocephalous Orthodox Church. The political conditions of the Polish People's Republic provided great challenges to the post-war reconstruction of church life. As far as possible, it was counteracted by the succeeding Metropolitans Timothy Schroeter, Stefan Rudek, and Basil Doroskiewicz. When the communist regime slightly revised its dictatorial attitude towards religion, there was a gradual stabilization and development. The systemic transformation and the adoption of the 1991 special law on relations between the state and the Polish Autocephalous Orthodox Church brought the Church unprecedented freedom and the possibility of versatile activity. Since 1998, Metropolitan Sawa has been the head of the Orthodox Church in Poland. The Orthodox Church carries out extensive pastoral, educational, scientific, publishing, cultural, charitable, and social activities. Monastic and parish life is developing. There is also a strong youth movement. The Polish state has almost always been multinational and multi-denominational, with deeply rooted traditions of tolerance. The Orthodox have been an important piece of this puzzle from the very beginning. They have made an enormous contribution to Polish and European culture. And in the midst of political and ethnic feuds, they have found ways to witness to the gospel of Christ in creative and heroic ways. "100 years of autocephaly, 1,000 years of history."